Hi, my name is Sandeep Ramchandani. I just spoke about the new gTLD opportunity. The key objective for me was to actually bring everyone up to speed on what's happening in the world of new gTLDs. We believe it's actually a very, very big deal as far as the industry is concerned. This is a historic moment in our industry. We're going from 18 gTLDs to 1,500, and that impacts every reseller and every hosting company in our business. So my objective was to just bring everyone up to speed on what's happening and how the industry might change as a result of the new TLDs. As a result of which, I also did bring out our plans as Directi. We are a big player in the new gTLD project, and we applied for 31 of the top TLDs. And we're very, very excited about the prospect of running some of these TLDs. Regardless of that, we're going to make sure that if there are resellers or registrars using Directi, we'll be on top of the new gTLD game and making sure that every one of our partners can take full advantage of the opportunities that the new gTLDs will bring about. And that's basically it. Thank you. First of all, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining me in today's discussion on the new gTLD opportunity. I'm going to skip this slide because I think Banner's already done enough talking about me, and let's get straight to the point, shall we? So new gTLDs. What's really the big deal, right? It's something that has so much hype in the domain name industry and has had that hype for the last 3 or 4 years. So the first set of slides, I'm trying to bring out the need for new gTLDs and why is it such a big deal as far as the domain name industry is concerned. I'll start out with a very, very impactful chart here about how dominant .com has been as far as the gTLDs are concerned. .com today has 73% of all the domain names registered in gTLDs. There are so many other TLDs, about 18 TLDs, mind you, but 73% is in .com. So if we were in a planet called gTLDs, and every gTLD was a country, the population, the world population, 70% of the world population would be in a single country called .com, right? So they've been really dominant, and what we're finding is that there's overcrowding. If 70% of the world population was in a single country, you can only imagine what the situation would be of that country. Don't get me wrong, .com is still king, and I think it will continue to be king for a long time to come. But there are some problems in this country called .com. First problem is the fact that 65% of new citizens are unable to get a respectable address. What do I mean by that? What I'm trying to say is that over 65% of check availability results are going back as unavailable. Consumers are not able to get a domain name of their choice. Everything is taken. There are 110 million domain names in .com, as a result of which consumers are not able to get a domain name of their choice. That's problem number one. Problem number two, no one really belongs to .com, since .com is for everyone and yet nobody. What does .com really mean, right? It's just the king of gTLDs because that's the way it started. It was a default naming convention, and that's why everyone is gravitating towards .com. First mover advantage. But it doesn't really mean anything, right? If there was a world where addresses really had a meaning, so if I'm a lawyer and I could register a domain name in .law, that has meaning. It tells my audience that I belong to the law industry. If I'm a bank and my internet address ended in .bank, that has a meaning. .com doesn't really mean anything. As a result of which, the .com dominance has led to a meaningless addressing system, where the right of the dot really doesn't mean anything. Everything is in .com. I'm a plumber, I'm a carpenter, I'm a small business, I'm a large enterprise, I'm an NGO. .com is for everyone. Rent rises 6% a year. So we're finding that the existing gTLDs are also raising their pricing year on year. So if there was a country called .com, rent would compulsorily rise about 6% a year. And lastly, prestigious addresses are hard to come by and cost a fortune. If I am a serious online business and I want to buy a generic keyword .com, they're very, very hard to come by. And when they do come by, they cost a fortune. And that's the reason why the Flipkarts of the world have to go online with a misspelling of Flipkart. Now, what happens in this sort of a situation, when 70% of the world is in one country and there exists the vast planet which is completely unoccupied? If there was a planet called gTLDs, ICANN would probably be the UN. So ICANN has looked at the situation and figured out there has to be a better way to take care of this because there's too much overcrowding happening in one space. What are we going to do about it? So ICANN discovers there's plenty more hospitable land that needs to be developed, right? But it needs to figure out a process through which newer registries can come and build on the different countries that exist that are completely unoccupied. So that's what they're doing. That's what the new gTLD process is all about. It's a process to identify credible operators of new gTLDs. So it's trying to develop the internet landscape and actually invite a lot more people to actually operate new gTLDs. Now, what happens if more than one applicant that passes ICANN's criteria is going for the same TLD? There's an auction process. So the two applicants will actually fight it out in an auction, and whoever wins that auction will continue to run that TLD. So in a gist, that's what the new gTLD process is all about. It's ICANN trying to resolve two key problems, one about overcrowding of the namespace in .com, and secondly, trying to create a more meaningful internet. Is it really a big deal? Let's take this statement and analyze it. It's been said that the new gTLDs is a historic one-time opportunity to perpetually own the internet, the new internet, that is. And let's break that down a little bit and understand this statement in a little bit more detail. It's historic. We're going from 18 gTLDs to as many as 1,500 or 1,600. It's something that will never, ever happen in the history of the internet. It's one time. Now, that doesn't mean that ICANN will not have subsequent rounds of new gTLDs. It will. But the fact is that all the good keywords are already taken in this round. So there won't be any good generic keywords left in the subsequent rounds to be taken. Hence, this is a one-time opportunity. And lastly, it's perpetual. So the way ICANN's contract works is that if you get awarded a specific TLD to operate, unless you really put it under serious threat from a stability perspective, you will continue to own it for life. And hence, it's perpetual. Point being that the new gTLDs is a very, very big deal as far as the domain name industry is concerned. Now, having looked at that, let's have a look at the fundamentals. Let's see what the market is like as far as domain names are concerned and see if consumers really have the appetite to buy more domain names. First of all, only 2.1 billion of the 7 billion people that live in our world are online. Clearly, a lot more upside, a lot more people to still go online. As you can see in the slide here, 70% of individuals from the advanced economies are already online, but only 20% from the emerging economies are online. And that includes India. Here you can see the stark progression that the emerging economies are having on the internet. So this is the total number of consumers online. As you can see, we're at about 75% of consumers coming from advanced economies. But by 2020, you'll actually have more consumers on the internet from the emerging markets like India, Russia, China, Brazil, etc., than the consumers that are there in the advanced economies. Internet penetration ratio. This is a number which is extremely important to the domain name industry because we've realized that it's a leader as far as trends are concerned. And once you have a certain threshold of internet penetration crossed within a certain country, the domain name volume or demand will surge significantly. Just to explain that in a little bit more detail, we're at about 10% internet penetration in India, which means only 1 out of 10 people in the population are actually online. And hence, if I'm a business, having an internet presence is good, but it's not important. It's not necessary. Let's put it that way. But let's look at China. In 2015, China, 1 out of every 2 people in that country, that vast country which has 1.5 billion people, are actually going to be on the internet. And if I'm a business or I'm a professional, I need to be online, without which I cannot reach my consumers. Hence, having an internet presence is going to be of extreme importance as opposed to a luxury that it is today in India. Domain penetration ratio, which is another number that we track very, very carefully. So this is the number of people that have a domain name from the number of internet users in a certain country. So in US, 38 domain names to every 100 users. The world average is about 10%. India and China are only at 2.5% and 2.4%. You're going to find that over the next 5 or 6 years, India and China is going to catch up to the world average. And what does that mean? That means a lot more domain names purchased over the next 5 years, a lot more websites going online, a lot of new opportunities for everyone in this room. Let's try and see what SMEs have to say and think about new gTLDs. So there's a survey carried out amongst SMEs to get their perceptions on what they thought about new gTLDs, all right? So firstly, only 15% of SMEs really knew about new gTLDs, so clearly awareness is extremely low. But when educated about the new gTLD program, about half of them said that they were likely to register a new domain name in the new gTLDs. Moreover, consumers are saying that they'll pay a higher amount for new gTLDs if it's relevant to their business. So if I'm a lawyer and I have the option of buying .law, I'm willing to pay 50% higher for that domain name because of the fact that's meaningful to what I do. It's a meaningful address and people are willing to pay a higher amount for a meaningful address on the internet. 44% said that they would have bought a domain name in the new TLD had the opportunity existed the time they bought a domain name. So if it's a new consumer going to buy his domain name, 44% would have actually bought a new TLD over an existing .com or .net or any existing gTLD that exists today. So what I'm trying to draw out is the fact that awareness amongst consumers is very low, but there are market factors which are driving up the demand in domain names in the future, and if the market is educated about the benefits of new gTLDs, they are willing to take the new gTLDs. So if you have a consumer base that buys domain names from you, new gTLDs are coming up, it's an opportunity to give them more option, give them a more relevant address. And that doesn't only apply to new businesses or new consumers, it also applies to existing consumers because they might have taken a 15-character .com because they didn't have a better option. Maybe they can get something that's closer to their name or business name in an extension that's more relevant to what they do. Now, the ICANN application process is done in terms of the applications have already been submitted, the deadline is passed, and ICANN is going through its review process. So let's understand a little bit more about the new gTLD game and the top players that took part in this game. 19 June 2011, a historic moment in our industry. This is the day when ICANN finally approved the new gTLD program. It was under development for a good 5-6 years. It's not easy to get such a big program out there, and June 19th is when it finally happened. Let's talk a little bit more about what it took to be a part of this game. So first of all, for every TLD, an applicant had to pay $185,000. On top of that, once he gets the TLD to operate, he has to pay a minimum of $25,000 a year, and if his transactions go about 50,000 every quarter, then he pays a per transaction fee as well. And here are some of the key ground rules that everyone had to comply with to be a part of this game. The first one is quite important. Common control between registry and registrars allowed. That is a dramatic change, because today, registries are not allowed to have common controlling interest in a registrar. But that has now been abolished in the new gTLDs, which means if I'm a new gTLD registry, I can actually have my own registrar company selling my TLD. And that has some dramatic effects, and we'll cover that a little bit more in detail later on. Country names not allowed to avoid confusion in the CCTLD. There's a certain section within the ICANN community called GAC, the Government Advisory Committee, and they have a say on many matters. And they were very clear about the fact that they don't want the exact country name to be allowed in the gTLD program for good reason, because it will conflict with the CCTLD. They don't want a private player to maybe pretend as though he's running a country-specific TLD. So exact country name is not allowed. But I can go for a .city. And there were many, many applicants that went for .city, and we'll look at them later on. And in order to go for a .city or any other geographic name, I have to have the backing of the local jurisdiction. So if I'm applying for .nyc, I need to have the mayor support my application. And there's a section called community applications. So if I'm starting a TLD that benefits a certain community, I get preference over someone who's going for the same TLD and doesn't really have a community angle to his application. So these are some of the key ground rules. What we saw was a grueling application process. Me and a bunch of people in our team actually worked for a good 6 to 9 months building our applications day in and day out. In fact, there was a point in time when we went 40 days without taking a break. That includes weekends, and we're working like 13, 14 hours a day. Grueling process. They're looking at financial projections of your TLD, your business capability to handle that TLD, and of course, technical competence to run a registry. We saw a lot of interest from brands as well, and we'll come to that a little bit later. Geographical breakdown of the applications, 1,930 applications came in, and 50%, or almost 50% of them were from North America, followed closely by Europe, not surprisingly. And we had only 1% each coming from Latin America and Africa, and 16% of all the applications came from Asia Pacific. Number of conflicts. So more than one applicant going for the same TLD. There were 751 conflicts. So these applicants were overlapping, where you had more than one applicant going for the same TLD. I spoke to you about brands. 34% of all the applications were from brands. All right? A lot of recognized names out here in the IT industry, including IBM, Amazon, and Google. But you also had a lot of large brands from different industries participate in this process. The question is, why would Ferrari be interested in own TLD? Because it's going to become their corporate brand online moving forward. All their properties on the internet is going to move to a .Ferrari moving forward. I spoke to you about cities. So you had most of the renowned cities actually apply for their TLD. Unfortunately, we didn't have any .city coming from India. We were seriously contemplating going for a .Mumbai and a .Delhi, but because of the process involved in actually getting government or local authority backing, we pulled out of that process. But I mean, you have NYC, you have London, Moscow, Rio, Vegas, Paris, and many other cities that will have their own TLD. The most applied for strings. Few surprises here. You had as many as 10 applicants going for .art and 8 going for .design. That was a bit of a surprise. I actually expected the maximum number of applications coming for .web, because I believe that .web is the true competitor to .com in the future. It's meaningful, it's generic, it's 3 characters, it has all the characteristics to make it a formidable competitor to .com, and yet you had only 7 applicants for it. .blog is also, I think, one of the winners in this new gTLD, or will be one of the winners when the gTLDs come out, because it does have a lot of scope. .shop also, I believe, is going to be one of the next winners when they actually start to resolve. Let's learn a little bit more about the largest players in this game. By far, the largest player was Donuts. This is a company that started by a gentleman called Paul Stahura. He was the former founder and CEO of Enorm. And he shocked everyone in the industry by going for as many as 307 applications. So he's come up with a massive list of keywords, all the generic names, and he's gone for all of them. Very, very risky strategy. Only time will tell if it pans out, but you have to give it to him for the guts that he has, because he had to put in, I think, close to about $60 million just in the application process. And remember, if there's an overlap, then it goes to auction. He has to shell out a lot more in the auction per TLD. TLDH went for 92. It's run by a gentleman called Anthony Van Koevering. He's been a part of the industry for a long time. And Registry, which is actually a company floated by a very, very famous domainer called Frank Schilling, has applied for 54 TLDs. Amongst the largest brands, you have Google going for 101 new TLDs. Amazon for 75. These two are the real wild cards in this game. They can either spoil or make it for everyone else, and we'll cover that in a little bit more detail moving forward. Richmond, which is a company that actually owns a lot of luxury brands like I think Mont Blanc and Cartier and few others, have gone for their own .brands, like I said, to move their online presence into their own TLD. And Microsoft went for 11. All of them are for internal use. They don't intend to actually have customers register domain names in them. Amongst the largest registrar applications, it is my pleasure to tell you that Directi, under the Radix brand, is the largest registrar applicant in this entire process. We've applied for 31 new gTLDs, and we'll go through them one by one in a lot more detail. Closely followed by Demand Media, which owns eNorm at 26. What's interesting is that there's no overlap between us and eNorm. So the 26 names that they've gone for, there's nothing overlapping with the 31s that we've gone for. And we've gone for the very best TLD, so I don't know what that says about the TLDs that they went for. Tukas applied for 4 TLDs, and there's only one overlapping with us, which is .online. And Momentous, which is a company started by the people behind Pool.com, have applied for 4. There have been some really weird TLDs also that have been applied for. Like there's .horse. Okay, fortunately, their business model doesn't depend on selling domain names to horses, but it's basically meant for people that are part of the horse industry. It's called the horse industry. There's got to be a better word to that, but it's on their website, and horse lovers. But seriously, I mean, there are like a lot more people that you can target who have a much more specific use for a domain name than what they have for .horse. .africa. Now, what's really hilarious about this one is the fact that they meant to apply for .africa, but when they submitted their application, they put the dot and they added .dot Africa. So it was a mistake, right? They meant to apply for .africa. Now, they're working with ICANN to try and see if they can edit it, but there's another applicant that has correctly put .africa, and they're like, you can't allow that change because I have one .africa and I'm the only applicant. So that's interesting. This .rip, very interesting business model. It's actually an online memorial. So if you have a loved one, a dear one, a friend who passed away, you can actually set up an online memorial where people from all around the world can pay tribute to the people that have passed away. I think that's a pretty interesting model. There's .sucks, which is very controversial for good reason, because if I'm a brand, and if I don't register my brand .sucks and someone else does, I'm doomed. So it's obviously raising a lot of suspicion. How is India represented in this process? Apart from us, and we were the only portfolio applicant in this entire game, quite a few brands went for their TLD. We have names like Airtel, HDFC, Reliance Group being involved in this process in a big way. SBI and the Tata Group also was quite involved in this process. And you had 2 applicants for .desi, which is basically a domain for the Indian community all over the world. Who knows how they'll do, but that's interesting. And you have 3 IDN applications in the form of .com and .net by VeriSign and .sangatan by the Public Interest Registry. So what does Reliance say about their plan? They obviously intend to use it as their primary brand online, and they'll have all their businesses moving to a .reliance. So they're a large group, right? So they're going to have retail.reliance, petroleum.reliance, and so on, and move their entire online strategy to a .reliance TLD. They also applied for .Indians to promote their IPL team, Mumbai Indians. What are the timelines looking like? So this text, I think, a little bit fine, so I'll take you through it. The next few milestones as far as the new gTLD program is concerned. So in December, what they're going to do is draw chits to basically identify the order in which they approve the applications. Because you've got 1900, determine the order in which they go through the processing queue. Then in March, they're actually going to be starting work on, or March, they're actually going to be announcing the first set of results. They're going to go through a whole process of evaluating all the applications. The first set will be out in March, and they'll conclude the entire evaluation process in June. April is a milestone in terms of the GAC actually has the ability to flag certain applications that they find either controversial or not in the best interest of their country for whatever reason. And if they flag certain application, then they'll have to go through a process in which they can negotiate with the GAC and make sure they get GAC clearance. And that's not the only hurdle. There are many, many hurdles in the process. There's opportunity for anyone to go out there and object for a certain TLD under certain grounds. We might also see certain lawsuits as a part of this program. So it's not a smooth sail moving forward at all. There will be a lot of hurdles in the process that applicants need to be prepared for. Finally, I don't think you'll see the first TLD come out before June or July next year. So now we're going to go through how Radix has actually participated in this process. So we went for 31 TLDs, as already covered. We're the largest registrar applicant in this process, Asia's largest as well, and the only Indian portfolio applicant. We've already committed $30 million to this initiative, but we need to cough up a lot more because we've gone for the very best TLDs, and there's going to be contention and auction on most of them. So we're getting prepared for that. And I also got the Directi brand name out there in the prominent media. So there was, like, I think BBC and the Wall Street Journal and several other very, very renowned publications actually picked up the Directi story. And here it is, guys. These are the TLDs that we went for. So like I said, our strategy is very clear that we'll go for the very best TLDs. We spent about a year and a half preparing the entire list of TLDs that we want to go for. Right? We spent about nine months in building the application, but took a lot more time to decide which TLDs to go for. A lot of research went behind the TLDs that we feel will be the winners in this new era. Some of the really exciting ones that I can talk about really quickly is .web, of course, and I think already covered how I think that is going to be a game changer. .blog, .host, and I'll have some good news to share on .host. .hotel, .law, .movie, .music, .play, going for .app, .bank, insurance, and loans is a slightly different strategy. These are TLDs which are closed in nature, which means that only if you're a licensed banking operator can you register a .bank with us, for obvious reasons. You know, it's a closed TLD. Security is a major concern as far as the banking industry is concerned. So only if you are a bank, a licensed bank, can you register a .bank. And the same applies for insurance and loans and doctor as well. So the space is intended for very, very legitimate purposes. And when a consumer is transacting on a .bank, he's assured it's not a phishing attack. Right? He knows that's the right bank that's behind that domain name. So CEDO actually carried out a very, very detailed research on all the TLDs to identify which are the top valued according to them. So they came out with a list of 10 most valued TLD based on a lot of qualitative and quantitative data. They actually have some PhD carry out this research. And they came up with these 10. Not surprisingly, you know, the top 2 are shop and web. And I'm happy to tell you that we've actually applied for the top 7. So all of the top 7 Radix is actually built and applied for. So that goes to show that a lot of the research that we put in building our TLD list actually paid off. What's great is we have 3 TLDs without any competition. That includes .host. Something very, very excited about and very surprised that there's no one else that went for .host. We're already thinking about our strategies and plans to actually, you know, put it out there in the hosting industry. And hopefully by, you know, ResellerClub hosting summit next year, you guys will actually be able to register a .host for your own business. There's .press, which is a TLD for journalists and the industry. And .space, which is not for sci-fi intentions. It's meant for just very, very generic and open use, really. The game will change. We're going to go from 18 gTLDs that exist today to 1,500. And it's not going to take tens of years to do that. It's happening now. By 2015, you're going to have most of these TLDs go through. That has a dramatic impact on the domain name industry. And it's something that all of us have to prepare for. So let's take a deeper look into the 2 wildcards in this entire process. Like I said, these 2 can really, you know, make it or break it for the other players. So we've analyzed, you know, a set of applications. Remember that all the applications, the big set of the answers that applicants have provided is public. So you can go out there and identify what their business intention is for each of the TLDs. So we've analyzed that, and we took a bunch of Google's applications. And so for .blog and .cloud, what they're saying is that it's not a registry meant for consumers, open for consumers to register. It's something that tying into their service. So only users on the Blogger platform can actually register .blog, and it's tied into that service. Highly disappointing, because we can all see what the opportunity is if we actually sell a .blog and allow everyone to actually get their address on .blog. It could be on WordPress or any other platform, but unfortunately, if Google has their way, you can only get a .blog address if you're on the Blogger platform. So they've been quite smart about the way they've worded things, because they said that if ICANN objects to this plan, then we'll open up to other registrars. So they've really covered their backs pretty well when it comes to these applications. .search is only for internal use. So it's like a .brand for them. It's a generic keyword, but they're saying that they won't be allowing any registrations and only using .search for its own purposes. And I think the purpose is pretty obvious. .web, fortunately, they realized that if they went for a closed application for .web, it's going to lead to a great amount of protest. And hopefully their intentions here are genuine. They intend to offer .web through all the registrars. Amazon, on the other hand, they didn't care about being smart or diplomatic about the process. They applied for 75 TLDs, many of which are the top generics, including movie, app, music, shop, everything for internal purpose. So if they have their way, they get these 75 top generics, and no consumer is allowed to register any domain names on them. That would be a massive, massive disappointment for the industry. There is a lot of people coming out there and protesting about this game plan of these top brands monopolizing the key generic TLDs, but there's nothing in the ICANN application process, unfortunately, that disallows them from doing that. So, only time will tell how this actually pans out. The expected market changes. So, like I said, the market is going to change forever. And, just quickly put down, because this subject is actually a presentation on its own, but I've tried to quickly cover some of the key changes that will occur as a result of the new gTLDs. Firstly, a dramatic shift in power from registries to registrars. There are a limited number of registries today, which means that most registrars are offering all of them. But the moment you have 1,000 new gTLDs come in, registrars will be king. The shelf space on registrars will go for a premium. And the power will change dramatically from registries to registrars and resellers, because resellers control the shelf space and control a certain percentage of the market as well. Registrars will have to choose a small set of new TLDs, 1,900. They might carry everything, but you can't focus on 1,900 TLDs, right? So you're going to have to focus on a subset of those TLDs. And that leads to the next point. Registries will sell directly to their own registrar. Remember, we covered that in the new gTLD process, registries can actually set up their own registrar, which means that because registries can't get attention or shelf space on the existing registrars, they're going to have to set up their own retail or wholesale channel and sell directly. And you're going to see a lot of that happen. You're also going to see the emergence of these niche specialized sort of registrars. For example, I can foresee a sports-focused registrars that's actually offering only .sports and all other sports TLDs like .tennis, .golf, .cricket, and he's focused on that vertical. So verticalization of the marketplace is what's expected. And similarly, there could be like a professionals registrar who's offering .pw, .pro, and architect, and so on and so forth. And he's focused on that specific vertical. I think you're going to see that as well, because we live in a time where they're very, very general registrars. You know, you offer all sorts of TLDs, and you don't really focus on any specific vertical, right? What is Directi doing? So we're very, very invested in this process, as you know. We've applied for 31 of the top TLDs. It's in fact been, I think, the largest business initiative that Directi has taken in its history. It's a very, very big deal for us. So we're very, very closely involved in the process. We're involved in the policy development process because there are many, many fine changes and details that are still being worked out on how these registries will operate. So we're keeping close tabs on that by attending all the ICANN meetings and other relevant meetings. We're also gearing up from a business perspective because you're going to have like thousands of new TLDs to work with, and we need to have the resources in place to make sure we're ready for that. So that's something we started thinking about and working on today, like which TLDs are we going to be adding, what are the processes that might change, because the new policies that will be introduced when the new gTLDs come up. And we need to be prepared from a technology and from a resource standpoint to handle those dramatic changes. So direct market share. So it's a good opportunity to open up a new TLD to an audience which can offer good domain names at a good price. So the sunrise actually starts 3rd December, and general availability where consumers can actually register domain names first come first serve and .pw from 25th March onwards. So that's basically it. To conclude, this is a very, very big development in the industry, and Directi is well on top of it. If you're working with us as a registrar or reseller, can be well assured that you will have the best opportunity to take advantage of what is a massive shift in the industry. It's basically a bunch of references, a lot of websites that are covering the new gTLD process in a lot of details. Like I said, all the applications are public, so you can go and scrutinize them and understand what each applicant wants to do with their application. And there's a lot of material out there. With that, I take a leave. Thank you very much. You've been a great audience.